Hello, this is Graham, and in this video we're going to look at the underlying theory of cognitive behavioural therapy. From 250,000 years BP to about 10,000 years BP, in the Paleolithic era as it's known, our hunter-gatherer ancestors lived in fear of attack by faster, larger and more ferocious animals. They therefore needed to be able to outsmart their predators and their prey, think quickly, recognise potential danger, conserve energy, and breed. The social brain hypothesis, which was proposed by British anthropologist Robin Dunbar from Oxford University in 1998, argues that human intelligence evolved as a way of surviving and reproducing in large and complex social groups. As our skills and societies became more complex, so our brains got bigger, and the volume of oxygenated blood flowing through them increased. This growth was mainly in the area of the cortex, which massively expanded. The cortex is associated with higher thought processes, such as reasoning, abstract thinking, and decision-making. Processing information quickly becomes key to our survival, but logic doesn't work that fast, especially if there are lots of options to our decision making. So we use shortcuts known as heuristics. A lot of these are based on what we call cognitive distortions or cognitive biases. The trouble is that what was really useful in the challenging world of cave dwellers isn't so helpful today. For example, when food is in short supply, binging on calorie-dense grub when we can get it makes sense. But in those days, we would be walking 15 to 20 miles a day, every day, in search of food, and sometimes returning empty-handed. Today, of course, we walk less, often less than 2 miles a day, but still can't resist bars of chocolate, sweet biscuits, or late-night bowls of muesli. Similarly, when we lived in small groups and resources were hard to come by, we needed to recognise strangers quickly and not trust them until we knew them well. Today, this manifests itself in racism and xenophobia. And again, when we had limited food, we needed to conserve our energy. So our hunter-gatherer ancestors would shun exercise and take any opportunity they could to relax by the open fire, snuggled up in woolen skins and so on. Today, we still like to snuggle up in our onesies by the fire, and many people struggle to drag themselves out to exercise. As a result, we become overweight and our health suffers. Like most animals, we are genetically programmed to want to reproduce. We have little control over our need to produce the next clutch. This in itself is a problem for society today because the fundamental cause of climate change, for example, is excessive human population. But it goes further. Having sex becomes a priority. So we've evolved to derive pleasure from it, to seek it out, to use it to reinforce emotional bonds. We can't get enough of it, and the neurophysiological responses to it, which has many negative consequences as well, and has spawned several industries, from the porn industry to the fertility industry. When you're living in such a tough environment, finding a robust, healthy mate is a challenge. So we've evolved stereotypes of physical appearance to help us decide quickly. And if we don't think we have the optimum, then we adorn ourselves, we mask our imperfections, or we showcase our best features. Today, of course, the need for a physically robust mate is much less important, yet the stereotypes persist, and the cosmetic industries are worth billions. Cognitive distortions have been studied extensively in the last 20 to 30 years. What we thought were a handful have been shown to be very many. In fact, over 300 significantly different distortions have been identified, not just described, but proven experimentally in a wide range of different ways to be operating in most of our minds. You might be forgiven for thinking that most of us rarely ever think rationally. This diagram was commissioned by the Wiki Foundation as a codex, a way of classifying the many cognitive biases. Take a while to study it. You'll see that under each of the 4 main categories, there are 5 or 6 contexts, and within each of those, as many as a dozen different tricks that our mind performs on us to persuade us to behave in a particular way. Here are 6 of the earliest identified cognitive distortions. They were described by one of the pioneers of CBT, Aaron Beck. We're going to be looking at his work in more detail in the next video. While it's possible to become quite sophisticated in the use of CBT by identifying the associated thoughts behind each of the 300 plus cognitive biases, or even just the half a dozen that Beck identified, it's still very helpful to many clients to simply acknowledge that most of the examples of distorted thinking take the form of what we call automatic negative thoughts, or ANTs. Originally identified by Beck, ANTs are the expression of the cognitive biases. They take 3 forms: views about the world, views about the self, and views about the future.